guys, it's me Zoie again, and we are back to read chapter 2 of The Thing About Jellyfish. So here we go. Chapter 2, Sometimes Things Just Happen. You were dead for 2 whole days before I even knew. It was afternoon, late August, in the end of the long, lonely summer after 6th grade. My mom called me in from outside, and I knew something was wrong. Really, really wrong. Just by looking at her, I got scared, then thinking that maybe something bad happened to my dad. But since the divorce, I wouldn't even matter. Would it even matter to my mom if he got hurt? Then I thought maybe something was wrong with my brother. Zoo, Mom started. I heard the refrigerator bum. A point from the shower dripping the ticket that comes from the old clock on the mantle, whose time is always wrong unless I remember to wind it. Long streaks from sun cross. Long streaks of sun cross through the window, like spirits through walls. They lay down on the carpet, and were still. Mom spoke evenly, her words coming out at normal speed. Yet everything seemed to slow down, as if time itself had grown heavy. Or maybe like time had stopped existing altogether. Franny Jackson drowned. 3 words. They probably took only a couple of seconds to come out, but they seemed to last about half an hour. My first thought was, that's weird. Why is she using Franny's last name? I couldn't remember my mom ever using your last name. You were always just Franny to her. Then I realized that the thing that she said after she said your name, drowned. She said you had drowned. She was on vacation, Mom continued. I noticed how perfectly still she was sitting. How rigid her shoulders were. A beach vacation. Then she added, as if it would somehow help the thing she'd said to make any sense at all. In Maryland. But, of course, her words didn't make sense. Because it hadn't been that long since I've seen you. And you were as alive as anyone then. Her words didn't make sense because you were always such a good swimmer, better than I was from the instant we met. They didn't make sense because the way things ended between us was not the way they were supposed to end. They were not the way anything should ever end. And yet here was my mom. She was right in front of me, and she was saying these words. And if her words were true, if she was right about this thing she was telling me, it meant that the last glimpse I had of you, walking down the hallway on the last day of 6th grade, carrying those bags of wet clothes and crying, would be the final one I've ever done. I ever have. I stared at my mom. No, she didn't, I said. You hadn't. You couldn't have. I was sure of that. Mom opened her mouth to say something, then closed it again. She didn't, I insisted. Louder this time. It was Tuesday, Mom said. Her voice was quieter than before, as if my getting louder had stuck to the strength of her own breath. It happened on Tuesday. I only just found out. It was Thursday now. 2 whole days had gone by. Whenever I think about those 2 days, around the space between you ending me and knowing, I think about the stars. Did you know that the light from our nearest star takes 4 years to reach us? Which means when we see it. When we see any star, we are really seeing what it looked like in the past. All those twinkling lights, every star in the sky could have burned out years ago. The entire night sky could be empty this very minute, and we wouldn't even know it. She could swim, I said. She was a good swimmer, remember? When Mom said nothing, I tried again. Remember, Mom? Mom just closed her eyes and placed her forehead in the palms of her hands. It's impossible, I insisted. Why couldn't she see how impossible this was? When Mom looked up, she spoke slowly, like she was trying really hard to make sure I heard every single word. Even good swimmers can drown, Zoo. But it doesn't make any sense. How could she? Not everything makes sense, Sue. Sometimes things just happen. She shook her head and took a deep breath. This probably doesn't even seem real. It doesn't seem real to me either. Then she closed her eyes for a few long seconds. When she opened them again, her face twisted up in a terrible way. Tears began spilling down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she said. I'm just so sorry. She looked grotesque. Her face all crumpled like that. I hated the way she looked. I turned away from her. Those nonsense words were still tumbling in my head. You drowned swimming in Maryland 2 days ago. No, none of it made sense. Not then, and not later. That night when the earth dipped toward the stars, not the next morning when it rolled back around to the sunlight again. It didn't make sense that the world could roll back into sunlight again. All this time I thought that our story was just that. The story was just that. Where was I? But it turns out you had your own story, and I had mine. Our stories might have been overlapped for a while, long enough that they even looked like the same story, but they were different. And that made me realize this. Everyone's story is different all the time. No one is ever really together. Even if it looks for a while, they are. There was a time when my mom knew what had happened to you. When the weight of it had already hit her, and I was just running through the grass like it was any other day. And there was a time when someone else knew, my mom didn't. And a time when your mom knew and almost no one else in the planet did. that means that there was a time when you were gone and no one on earth had any idea. Just you all alone disappearing into the water and no one even wondering yet. And that is incredibly lonely thing to think about. Sometimes things just happen, my mom had said. It was terrible. It was a terrible answer. The very worst. Miss Turton, right? Okay. Says when something happens that no one can explain, it means that you have bumped up against the edge of human knowledge, and that is when you need science. Science is the process for finding the explanations that no one else can give you. I'll bet you never even met Mrs. Turton. Sometimes things just happen. It's not an explanation. It is not remotely scientific, but for weeks and weeks, that was all I had until I stood in that basement room looking at jellyfish on the other side of the glass. That is the end of chapter 2. I hope you enjoyed, and bye.